Welcome to the Channel Angle. I am your host, Cass Cooper. Today I'm joined by someone who has shaped the channel for more than 25 years. Tom Barsi has led channel programs at Palo Alto Networks, VMware, and Proofpoint. Now he's at Veza, where he heads global ecosystems and alliances. It's a big moment. Identity security is becoming one of the most important growth areas for partners. Tom, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the Channel Angle.
Yes, thanks for having me. It's so great to see you.
So we've been looking at the channel a long time, back almost 25 years, I think we said.
You did. You're really dating me, but thank you.
That's okay. I feel like it's wisdom, right? It's a way for us to lean into the wisdom and the knowledge that we have. And that's what brings you here as our subject matter expert today. So looking back over the last years of your career, what's the biggest challenge you've seen in go-to-market strategies that you're building with partners?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so. I've been doing this a long time, as you stated, and it's changed. When I started, it was just all about channel, and now there's a reason why we use the term ecosystems, because it really is. There's various pillars to go to market. You got your traditional resellers, which we all know and love and understand. You have the second pillar, which is services led. Partners that want to actually design, build, and operate services on top of software. Think of GSIs, think of boutique identity firms that are out there. Then you have, traditional tech alliances. I'm down here at CrowdStrike Falcon this week, big partner of ours, a tech alliance. And then the fourth pillar, which I think has become one of the most transformative pillars in ecosystems and channels, and that's the cloud service providers. AWS Marketplace has become a core pillar to how we work, and it sort of brings in all those pillars together, working in collaboration through the marketplace. So it's definitely transformed over time.
I love to hear that because I think change is inevitable, and being able to kind of, for those of us who are maybe newer to the channel or, coming in and trying to learn what has worked and what hasn't and what we can do in the future, it's important to have people like yourselves who can tell us. So what's something that used to work then and doesn't really work anymore in the ecosystem as it's changed?
That's a great question. I think I would say that's a good question. I'd say services have become core to even sort of the traditional resellers. Just doing transaction as a commodity just doesn't really work anymore. And our clients, our joint clients, as I sat through, at Palo Alto Networks, we transformed SOC and transformed firewalls, et cetera. And then in my days at Carbon Black, we transformed endpoint with EDR. And right now at Veza, we're transforming identity. And when you're thinking about transformation, our clients are looking to third-party advisors. And those advisors need to be able to offer services, whether they're advisory services on best practices, whether they're implementation services on how to get the stuff deployed and integrated across their network, or whether they just don't have the resource to do it and they need someone to help them operate. So I'd say what's changed is it's no longer about the commodity transactions and more around transacting plus doing the services that our clients require to lean in on the transformation.
Yeah, I love the way that the channel has really evolved to be more collaborative
Yep.
between partners, even between partners amongst themselves, but then
Yep.
also with the vendors and SaaS operators and now with IT. The last 5 years, I'm sorry, now with AI. And the last 5 years have really changed things with cloud and, like I said, AI and SaaS and new regulations and all of that. What have you seen been the biggest shift in partner relationships over this time?
I think it comes down to the collaboration that you were talking about. For example, just a couple of years ago, the resellers looked at AWS Marketplace as the enemy, and the resellers have had to embrace it. And it's now Marketplace has become to where you're doing private offers between the client, the reseller, whether it be an Optiv or a GuidePoint, and AWS Marketplace. So it really is a collaboration, and they've actually come together and embraced it. And as part of that process, you're meeting the client where they need to be. And as a part of the transaction in a collaboration between a reseller and marketplace, there's budget there that exists with marketplace in terms of commits. There's already contracts in place. So it's all about like eliminating friction and collaborating more together. And that's really why I say, it's ecosystems, because it really is a bunch of different partners that have to kind of work together to deliver better outcomes for our clients. It's all about delivering better outcomes.
I would expect that that changes what I mean, partner expectations are. So have those changed over the past 5 years, let's say?
For sure. 5 years ago, I mean, CrowdStrike definitely leaned in on marketplace, but 5 years ago, you didn't have in enterprise sales, there really wasn't the whole marketplace notion. So that's really where it's been. The transformation has taken place. That's really where the education, re-educating sellers on how to deal with marketplace and how to help them collaborate between the two. So that's been the biggest change from my
Yeah.
perspective.
And I love to hear that because the channel runs so much on relationships and not every partner gets the same seat at the table, unfortunately. But I think it also shows, an opportunity. You get out what you put in. And the more that you connect with people and the more you're able to provide solutions and services, you really can do really well here.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's anything that vendors can do to make sure like smaller firms, the ones that are more diverse owned or underrepresented voices, are there things that are being done that maybe we're not seeing that help bring more people into that table and into the ecosystem through those relationships?
I would say yes, and I am like I said, I lived through the email transformation and then endpoint transformation with Carbon Black and then SOC transformation with Palo and now with identity. And identity is new to me. And in coming in, I knew the traditional big channel partners like a GuidePoint or an Optiv or CDW, et cetera. And then I also knew the GSIs, but there is a cottage industry around identity and these boutique firms that just all they do is identity and identity services for their clients because there's some complexity to identity. So it's really been getting out there and identifying these boutique firms that have a specialty in identity that we've been really embracing. And it's proving they may not be sourcing business for us necessarily, but what they're doing is they're actually making sure that our clients are successful in terms of getting deployed. So they're doing the PS services, they're doing the implementation services, they're advising on best practices. It's been eye-opening for me, and it's a whole different sort of boutique firms that I never dealt with over the last 20 years.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. So, for those of us, and maybe we should have asked this sooner, for those of us who are new to understanding how identity fits into not just the channel ecosystem, but cybersecurity in general, tell us a little bit more of a background on how that fits into the ecosystem as it works right now. I think maybe I should have asked that first, but now that I'm
That's
thinking,
okay.
it might be a good place for our audience, those who are, again, we try to look at people who are newer to the channel trying to figure out, where what don't they know? Like what can we know more about identity as a service?
Well, I mean, the first thing we need to understand why it's the light is shining on identity is because it is the number one threat vector.
Mm.
Is CrowdStrike put out in their reports that the number one point of a breach is around identities. And so it's the new battleground and it needs to be addressed. And so when you look at security, I mean, there's obviously some core pillars. There's all things SOC, there's things, network SASE and network transformation that's happening there. There's cloud, and then identity is a core pillar, no question about it. And really where Veza comes in, we're all about identity security around access. And to put it simply, it's like shining a light on who has access and should have access to what resources. Sounds like a simple thing to solve. It hasn't been solved. And so we really focus in when you think about technology, it's all around, of course, we got to have acronyms in our industry.
Absolutely. It
It
wouldn't
keeps
be
us
us if it.
employed. It keeps us employed. And so it's identity security posture management, ISPM. And we often talked about our access graph that we have, which is basically drop us in, integrate across your SaaS applications, your cloud applications, your identity stores, and then flip a switch. I'm going to flip a switch like that. And then suddenly you have visibility. It's like an X-ray machine. You have visibility in who has access to what. And that's really the core pillar of what Veza started. So you drop us in from an access perspective. And now from a security perspective, you can actually see who has access to what and who should have access to what and who should not have access to what, humans and non-humans in terms of what you're doing. And from there, I often say you can't control what you can't see. So you start with visibility. And then once you have that visibility, then you can actually take back control of your identities within the enterprise. And you start doing some other things around technology like access reviews. And then you get into identity governance and access, IGA. So the traditional sort of SailPoint and Savient space over time, which is where we'll go.
Yeah. It actually reminds me of the other series we do, Channel Women in Security, and we did a episode recently with Jen Waltz, and she talked a lot about how identity is just such a hard place for people to, the average consumer, we're not talking about people who are in the channel, but the average consumer to really
Yeah.
wrap their head around what they need and how they can protect themselves. And so it's really good to know that there's organizations like yours that are out there doing that from an enterprise level so that we can all be safer and more secure, because at the end of the day, we all need to make sure that our data is protected and it is our number one asset, and that our personal identities stay safe, because we do live so much of our life online, and who has access to that is a critical part to just general security.
You got it. Exactly. And we like to say it's all about least privilege. So people should only have access to what is required, rather than sort of traditional access has been once you authenticate, you got full blown access. And that's the problem. So once the attacker makes it into the network, it's the world's their oyster. So it's all about, control. You hear about zero trust. You hear about least privilege. And so that's where our focus is around identities.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit. You've worked in some very different cultures and some very different organizations, as you mentioned, Palo Alto Networks, VMware, and your leadership, I'm sure, has changed over the past few decades. So what are some lessons that you can give to those just entering the channel, or maybe who are mid-level in their leadership journey?
It's a good question. I mean, it's, my styles change. I think as you get more comfortable with yourself, you can actually sort of, I think, be a little more transparent in how you lead, and being more comfortable in terms of promoting people around you and embracing that. So over time, I think I've become, right, wrong, or indifferently, I've become a mentor to many. And it's not like I like to preach. It's the best people that I've worked with and have been able to work with. They're asking me questions all the time, and I just love giving back that way. So in terms of my style, I'm open. I'm not hierarchical at all. I'm available always. And, I lead from the front. I roll up my sleeves. I still get after it. And I love that. And I love it about this. And like I say, no matter what I accomplish in this business, my legacy will be my relationships. And there's no question. And in my role, it's everything. I mean, that's my currency, is the relationships that I have, not only from a partnering community, but for people that have worked for me or that I've worked for. And, it's lasting friendships. And it's kind of the thing that keeps me going, keeps me here more than anything else, actually.
Yeah, I love to hear that, because like I said, as someone who did not come through the channel through a technological background, it really is warm and welcoming to understand the value of relationships and the value of the culture that people bring and are building inside of the channel. So I'm glad to
Yeah,
see
for
that that's
sure.
something that you
For
are
sure.
championing as well, Tom. So
Yeah.
let's end on something a little lighter. Are you a reader?
I am a reader.
Okay, so what book are you reading right now, and would you recommend it to people in the channel?
I am rereading because I'm rereading. I do it like once a year, actually, Crossing the Chasm. And it's just because it's almost like I call it almost like the Bible for startups, in understanding, sort of landing a beachhead, and then getting your reference accounts, and then building a program, and building scale from there. And so every time I get back into a startup environment, a la Veza, and you're crossing that chasm. You can get a couple wins, but to really cross the chasm, you have to have reference accounts and you have to have repeatability. And so with Veza, we're making our way towards 50 million ARR. And with that, you get repeatability. And that's really where, ISPM comes in, and then you get a repeatable model, messaging, and all that kind of stuff. So I like to reread it and make sure it's fresh in my mind. And as I build out the channel and build out the programs, I'm sticking to it. So there it
Right.
is.
Tell me the name of the book again, so I make sure I put it in the show notes.
Crossing the Chasm.
Crossing the Chasm. All right, you heard it. That's what everybody should be reading in the channel. If you don't have a copy, I'm sure you can get one from someone on your Christmas list this year. So, Tom, thank you so much for being here with me today. Today's talk really showed us about the evolution of GTM and identity security. And it's not just about the technology, it's about leadership. It's about the relationships that we build and the trust that we build along the way that will shape the next chapter of the channel. All right.
Great to see you. And we'll look forward to staying in touch.
Sounds great. Thank you for our listeners for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit subscribe, share it with a colleague, and join us on next time on the Channel Angle. I'm Cass Cooper, and I'll see you soon.